There's been a lot of buzz about egg freezing being a kind of insurance policy for women looking to delay motherhood, especially with trend-setting companies like Apple and Facebook offering to pay for the procedure through their employees' benefits packages. But what do we really know about this procedure? Well, we know it's expensive, and we know it's kind of invasive, but does it work? Is it worth it? Is it dangerous? Is this just a scam where people are preying on women's insecurities about dying alone? It's important that we know that, because if the perennial question is, can women have it all, could the answer be egg freezing? Given today's social and professional climates, more and more women are delaying pregnancy.
I guess I think maybe I'd be like in my mid-30s. As a young woman, I'm thinking more about what I want to do professionally than I am about family and stuff like that.
How old are you, Gabby?
21.
Are you really?
Nope. I'm 20.
Do you ever think about like having babies or starting a family or?
I'm mostly thinking about trying not to have a kid.
Yeah.
I need to live out my life, and I want to be in a comfortable spot financially.
55 years ago, birth control pills gave women control over their own bodies, enabling them to chart their own reproductive destinies, to delay pregnancy until the time was right. According to a recent study by the CDC, first births to women 35 and older have increased nearly 9-fold in the past 4 decades. As women, we spend so much time in our teens and 20s trying to prevent pregnancy because that's considered the responsible thing to do. But that also makes it easier to forget our own biology, that our most fertile years are between the ages of 19 to 26. Now, many women are looking to assisted reproductive technology to help them beat their biological clocks, or at least to press the snooze button and buy a little more time.
For the segment of women who say, I want to pursue a career, then egg freezing in particular provides them a tremendous option that women of my generation, and certainly the generations before me, just did not have.
I think egg freezing is a tremendous advance, perhaps one of, if not the most tremendous advance in women's reproductive health in the last 50 years.
Up until about 15 years ago, eggs were frozen using a slow freeze method, which was generally ineffective. But in 2000, the process was significantly improved by a new technology called vitrification. And in 2012, the American Society for Reproductive Technology lifted the experimental label on vitrification, making the procedure widely available for women looking to delay motherhood.
Life today is younger women postponing childbearing, advancing careers, advancing education, advancing their families, doing whatever they want to do. And all of that requires postponing childbirth. It's really a great, great insurance policy.
And while many people see egg freezing as an empowering advance for women, others are not so sure.
It's not an insurance policy, that's for sure. You might be one of the lucky people, but you're more likely to undergo a lot of discomfort, some risk, and a lot of expense, and then have heartbreak because you don't have a child, and you thought maybe you were going to get one out of those frozen eggs.
The marketing right now is suggesting that this is a hassle-free, easy, liberating thing that all young women should consider. The idea that we would market this to everybody, I find that deeply unnerving.
There is this whole new market niche, which is healthy young women who aren't infertile. And of course, any business is going to jump to get a whole new demographic as customers.
Hi, I'm Tracy. Nice to meet you. Why did you decide to freeze your eggs?
You know, that's a really good question. I'm young and I have a great career.
How old are you?
I'm 28, yeah, and I'm in digital ad sales. And so there isn't this immediate urgency to freeze my eggs in most people's opinions, but for me, freezing my eggs allows me to fulfill my dreams on my own timeline without depending on a man or my biological clock.
So how did the whole procedure go?
The first 14 days, you're taking hormones. I started off with my hormone estrogen rate at 61, and it got up to 1900.
Wow.
So by the end of those 2 weeks, you legitimately feel crazy. So after those 2 weeks, I went in for my surgery, which is a fairly simple procedure, and I noticed that my belly was really swollen. I looked a couple months pregnant. So I was nervous about it, and when I asked the doctor, she just handed me a one-sheeter, and at the title it was ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome.
Ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome is a condition that can result as a reaction to the hormones used in stimulating egg production. Serious cases of the condition only affect about 3% of patients, but in its worst instances, it can actually cause ovarian torsions, a separate and very threatening complication in which an ovary turns over on itself.
It was the kind of debilitating pain where you just feel paralyzed, and I started dry heaving, and I made it just a few steps into my apartment before I blacked out. And when I came to, I was on the couch and on the floor, covered in a cold sweat, and I was shivering. Like, I just had no idea what happened to me. I couldn't even reach for the Percocet bottle. And so I ended up getting rushed to the ER, and upon arrival, they diagnosed me with ovarian torsions. So you gotta understand, your ovaries usually are the size of walnuts, but mine ended up the size of grapefruits because of the ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. It's hard to even relive that moment. I went through a lot, and I would still do it all over again.
You would?
Yeah. Egg freezing is more than just an insurance policy. It's really setting myself up for any life I want, whether that includes a man or not.
Not everyone Vicky's age is in the financial position to freeze their eggs. Ironically, the women who can typically afford it aren't the best candidates. They tend to be in their mid to late 30s after they've established their careers, but by then, their fertility has already dropped off significantly.
This morning, I'm going to go for my first ultrasound visit with Dr. Sahakian, and he's a fertility specialist. He specializes in freezing eggs. I'll be 38 in June. You know, I'm unmarried. I'm in a strong relationship, and I love him very much. But that said, it does raise some very sensitive subjects about our relationship and about family planning and about timing. At some point, I had to ask, am I doing this for myself so that I have options when I'm ready? Or are we doing this together as family planning?
Women's fertility in the natural way, the natural arc it has, the idea that that's somehow a problem that women have to fix, I find that a deeply disturbing way of understanding women's bodies.
Josephine Johnston is the Director of Research and Research Scholar at the Hastings Center, a bioethics research institute based in New York.
Why are women finding themselves in their 30s or late 30s, mid-30s and feeling like they don't have an opportunity to reproduce or they can't do it on the timetable they want? Those people may want to use this technology, and I certainly wouldn't stop them, but I would want us to also ask the question about how it is that this is happening. Why are women in this position?
As the social implications of egg freezing were becoming more apparent, we decided to familiarize ourselves with the science behind it.
We are in sunny California. It's way different from the snow in New York, so much better. And we're driving to Encino to talk to Dr. Jeffrey Steinberg. He's an endocrinologist and the director of the Fertility Institutes. So hopefully talking to a medical doctor will give us some insight into what's involved and what actually happens to your body physically.
Can you describe the egg freezing process?
Sure. The egg freezing process begins with the woman coming in for a consultation where we go through her general health, her general fertility status, and what she expects out of the entire procedure. After that, we begin her on fertility drugs. The drugs are given by injection, and the women are taught to do that at home. They'll take the injections for 4 or 5 days, then come back to the office. We do a scan, we count the eggs growing in the ovaries, and we continue on with the medication for another few days. After about 10 days worth of fertility injections, the eggs are going to be full size and ready to release. And through the vagina with ultrasound, we're able to perform an extraction of the eggs. It takes 20 to 30 minutes. We have the eggs out. The woman goes home an hour later and basically recovers. Very short recovery, 1 or 2 days. After we've got the eggs in the laboratory, they're assessed for their maturity.
In order to see how this actually works, Dr. Steinberg invited us on a tour of his fertility lab.
I'm in a little danger of crazy camel toe. I mean, you're a gynecologist, right?
Yeah.
So what do you do in here?
In here, the scientist will receive the fluid coming from the ovary that I extract. And floating that tube of fluid is a microscopic particle that's the human egg. So they'll put that fluid under the microscope and they'll actually identify the egg.
Okay.
So this is a human egg just extracted from the ovary. That's what it looks like. And this is a typical egg retrieval. This is what we have after about 20 or 30 minutes with the patient. Incubators, this is where the eggs rest before they're ready to be frozen. So they're kept in a very controlled environment, and this environment is made to duplicate the inside of the woman's body.
So this is just like inside my vagina?
Inside your fallopian tubes.
Okay.
The eggs are then vitrified, which is a flash freeze process that causes the ice to form so quickly that crystals don't get a chance to develop. They're then placed into long-term cryopreservation for as long as the lady likes.
This is Lola and Ben I've got in here.
Oh my God, this one's face.
We were just talking about that. He always shows his teeth. It's expensive. Altogether, it'll be between $10,000 and $15,000.
For this portion of it? That
Just the freezing eggs.
Okay.
But it would be nice if there was like this checklist that says, okay, keep in mind storage costs, keep in mind genetic testing of embryos, keep in mind IVF. These are all of the anticipated costs down the line.
If Amy does decide to use her frozen eggs to conceive a child, the $10,000 to $15,000 she's paying for her procedure will eventually be compounded to upwards of $40,000 when all is said and done.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Okay, so you started your period yesterday?
Yesterday.
All right. So now this is like the most important test I can do is to look at your ovaries, and I'll show you the follicles that contain the eggs. That gives me how many eggs I can get from you. So go ahead and put your feet up in the stirrups. Okay. So as the probe goes in, it's not exactly comfortable. This is your right ovary. These black circles are eggs, okay? So I have to count them, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this is the left ovary. So on this side I can see about 6, actually 7. So you can sit up.
Okay.
So these two together, the 12 follicles together, are called an antral follicle count. You want that number to be over 8. So at your age, this is actually perfect numbers.
Well, then we're done here, right?
We're done.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. You did good. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You know, yes, I have friends, and they all have babies and husbands and full lives. And it's a beautiful thing and something that I've always wanted for myself. And then you look back and you're like, what was I doing? And I mean, I know what I was doing, and it comes down to timing and personal choices. You know, I moved for a job and I came back and, 5 years in one relationship with someone who didn't want kids and 4 years in another relationship. And, you make these choices and life moves on, but that's 9 years of being in relationships right there. That's where the time goes, And so admitting that you want this for yourself. Here I go.
Oh, why are you tearing up now?
It's admitting to yourself that it's so important to you. And it makes you vulnerable. It makes you vulnerable in your relationships because you have to be honest about what you want. And there is a sense of urgency, there is a sense of timing about this, and you can't turn back. And so admitting to yourself that this is pretty much the highest priority for you. And I really just want to make it happen,
Amy isn't alone in how she feels. Many women are feeling the need to secure their eggs for the future. And ever since the procedure's experimental label has been lifted, fertility clinics have started to offer egg freezing as an elective procedure. For-profit third-party brokers have also sprung up, serving as a go-between, connecting women with fertility doctors. Eggbanks is one of the largest egg freezing brokers in the world, and also happens to be how Amy found her fertility doctor.
We're gonna go speak with Gina Bartesi. the CEO of Egg Banks, which is a company that sells egg freezing to women through these egg freezing parties. Can you tell me about Egg Banks? What is Egg Banks?
Yeah, Egg Banks is a national network of 185 reproductive endocrinologists or fertility doctors that specialize in egg freezing. We've been called kind of the Uber for the fertility industry. In Uber's case, they pay the drivers, and in our case, we pay the fertility doctors. Patients can purchase egg freezing cycles directly online. We have negotiated exclusive pricing with 185 fertility doctors in the country. We're really about a mission of empowerment and giving women options and choices.
Can you tell me about the egg freezing parties?
Yeah, so the average age at our Egg Banks cocktail parties are at 33. We started them as egg freezing events. We wanted to get like-minded professional women in an intimate, fun setting. Our goal is to help them become educated that the science has improved significantly over the last couple of years, and then to just give it to them in a transparent, easy to access way.
Egg Banks is a pretty incredible and a new entity. It's the first network of fertility doctors specializing in egg freezing. And we offer exclusive savings for women because it's
the commercialization of egg freezing is an area that's, again, new because egg freezing is new and it's controversial. And I'm not 100% in favor of it at this point. I think one of the most important things as a young woman makes a reproductive decision is being fully advised and informed of everything that's going on.
What do you think about the brokers who facilitate egg freezing, like Egg Banks?
I think they're out there marketing their wares, and they're trying to make money on that as a business does. They're trying to persuade women by making them fearful that they're not going to be able to have children naturally. It's a hard sell.
If you're almost 40, I think all these doctors are going to say, you need to talk to an Egg Bank, somebody in the back, and figure out how you're going to preserve your fertility today.
Tell them, this is not
the way it's being discussed and marketed is liberating and empowering, because those are words that really are meaningful to us, that we've struggled for a long time to be able to be liberated and empowered, and it's an ongoing struggle for women to be those things. And then that language is used back at us in a technology like this to sell services that cost tens of thousands of dollars. Is it really liberating? Is it really empowering? You know, maybe it is, but do ask yourself that question. I think don't take it on faith that if they say it's liberating and empowering, it really is liberating and empowering. What would be liberating and empowering would be for women to be able to feel that they really did have a choice about whether they have a child now or later, that it was a real choice, as opposed to feeling like you're backed into a corner.
In addition to the questionable marketing strategies used by egg freezing brokers, critics take issue with the success rates they advertise. And it's hard not to think that they're capitalizing on a phenomenon that's as modern as the women it affects, FOMO, fear of missing out.
Critics would say that you're selling women on a narrative, but not really being upfront about the potential lack of efficacy.
Yeah, so we're actually not selling women on anything. They're more savvy consumers than that. They've done their homework. They know that there's not a guarantee with any kind of reproductive science or opportunity.
I mean, you said consumers, but aren't they really patients?
Yeah, they are. That's right. Consumers, patients, same thing, yeah.
So what are the statistics of getting a live birth from freezing your eggs?
And I'll tell you, the biggest thing right now is it's hard to get statistics from egg freezing. And the reason is because there's a relatively new technology that's being used to freeze eggs. And that technology is called vitrification, that says we're gonna freeze eggs when you're younger, and then when you're older, you're 38 or older, you're 35 and older, you can use those frozen eggs to conceive a healthy live birth down the road. So that's the data that exists. Those success rates are anywhere from 50 to 65%. That's 50 to 65% per lot of 6 embryos.
The stats that companies like Egg Banks point to aren't necessarily inaccurate, but there is definitely a difference in the way that a business out to make money frames them compared to how they're presented in scientific studies.
Okay, so one way to think about it is for each frozen egg, what's the chance that that egg will down the line turn into a live baby? And the professional organization of fertility clinics called SART, they put that rate at 2 to 12% for each egg, for all ages of women combined. and the meta-analysis data, they're looking at 75-7% failure rate for women aged 30, close to 90% failure rate for women aged 40.
Do you think that the women who elect to do this are aware of the failure rates?
If they're getting their information from the fertility clinics or from the brokers that have sprung up to facilitate egg freezing, they're not going to know this.
In addition to these relatively low success rates, the sample sizes are incredibly small. To date, only about 2,000 babies have been born from frozen eggs worldwide. If more women were made aware of this information, it's difficult to imagine many would spend their money on such a costly procedure.
Time to pick up the meds.
I think in part because the fertility industry has developed in the public sector, it's not covered by most health insurance in this country, and people are paying out of pocket. It's a lucrative business, and nobody has an interest in finding out what the long-term effects are.
We've got a big bag over here.
So it involves taking a couple of weeks of injections of powerful hormonal drugs to first shut down your ovaries and then hyperstimulate them. The hormonal drugs that are used are quite powerful, and many are used off-label, so they were never originally developed or approved by the FDA for the purpose of egg retrieval. And it's really disturbing that after egg retrieval has been going on for a couple of decades, there's really inadequate data and evidence about the level of its safety or risks. So that's a really important thing for women to know about and to think about.
They upped my dosage. It's actually twice as much as we discussed in the appointment. And they said because my follicle count was somewhat low, he counted 12 follicles at the last appointment. So they want me to do double the amount. And then I'm supposed to do this to my dosage, which is 375. 2, 375. This is what I learned by watching those movies. You're supposed to get the bubbles out. Well, so they said do it about an inch below your belly button or to the side. And I have a couple more shots to go, so I'll just pick a spot, I guess. I'm scared. I'm actually really effing scared. I hate this. Effing. Okay, I'm supposed to hear clicking. That's one. I did it to 375. I think I did it right. Moving down the line. It all depends on what you want to expose your body to, because you're taking, 10 to 12 days of hormone injections. Sure. So, it's a commitment, and you have to do what's right for your situation. Mm-hmm. It's in there.
So we're here at Dr. Sahakian's office, and Amy is being prepped for her procedure right now. She just got an IV and some pre-op antibiotics. She's gonna get some propofol that is going to put her out like she's sleeping for a little bit. And the procedure should only take about 15 minutes, and then she should have her eggs.
I don't look forward to a world where people undertake risky and strenuous medical procedures that they have a high chance of not needing. I think it would be a dystopian future for me, in which that was the way that we dealt with and responded to women's bodies. I think that it would mean that we had failed on a number of counts to support women and families and family building.
Like a week, but you should be back.
Are you awake still? That's how we know you're sleeping, when you stop talking. The day has come to do the procedure to see how many eggs I can get from her today. So she's in her 30s, so she's not gonna have lots of eggs, but I'm glad she's doing this. So if you look at the screen, you're gonna see one nicely here in a second. That big follicle you see, the big black circle, you see that needle tip, I just went in and it's gonna collapse around my needle tip. So this is how you do egg retrievals. It's one by one, you go in and aspirate these follicles and hope that there's a good egg in it that comes up. And I just basically go one by one and take these eggs.
Are you happy with the amount of eggs that you guys managed to
We'll see. We'll see how many. I mean, I wish she has more. I always wish somebody has more at her age, but I think she did pretty well for her age, and she might still have to do this one more time. In about 10 minutes, we'll know how many eggs we got from her.
Why shouldn't women try to have it all? It doesn't seem unreasonable to me that women should want to have a partner and a career that's satisfying and also a family. That doesn't seem to me to be asking too much. The question is, how do we help make that happen? Progress to me would actually be that women and men in their 20s and 30s were actually well placed to have families. Not that everybody was putting it off later and later and later. I wouldn't see that as progress.
Things have changed so much for women in recent decades, in many ways for the better. And I think that egg freezing is going backwards in a big way. It's a hyper-individualized solution to a very broad social problem that we should be tackling with changes in our social policies and our cultural expectations. What women need is to really have a culture where they're not going to be punished for taking maternity leave. And I'd like to see, better quality childcare with childcare workers who are better paid and more highly valued, so that we can leave our kids when they're little and not worry about them and be able to afford it and balance out working and taking care of kids.
Hey, Amy, how are you?
Good, thank you
okay?
so much. Yeah.
You feel good?
Yeah.
Okay. 13 eggs.
Are you serious?
So.
That was so much better than what we thought the last time.
Yeah. So get a hug on TV.
Thank you.
But we'll talk more, but you probably need to do it one more time. I want 20 and up, so.
Yeah, so as far as at Amy's age, is this considered a successful retrieval?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
This is what you expect to get.
Okay.
So I would say, she did well.
Do you think you're gonna do another round of this?
I'm not sure. But like the doctor said, it's all just about opportunity and peace of mind. So every additional egg I can get after this would be even more reassuring to me, but for now, I'm just happy with where I am.
While both egg freezing proponents and critics agree that women face an uphill battle in society, there's a split on whether the problems we face can be addressed with what those in support see as a technological fix. The big question is whether this is a fix at all. Is counting on egg freezing as a form of family planning just a different way of putting all your eggs in one basket? Meanwhile, many continue to argue that offering this procedure only exacerbates the inequality that women already experience, putting even more of the burden of fertility back on women's shoulders.